Hello and welcome into the Nittany Gritty podcast brought to you by the good folks at New Amendment. I am your host, Jon Sauber, joined as always by Penn State legend Tim Frazier. Tim, how's it going?
It's going all right. We got some new things happening our way in the Penn State world, so I'm excited to be able to talk about that. I'm excited to see what's going to come in the next couple of days and the next couple of weeks for the program.
Yeah, it's a lot, right? Like, listen, I know I bitch and moan a lot about how much I'm working and everything. It's my favorite thing to do. Like, I love my job, but I think I love bitching about my job even more than doing the job. But this week has been hectic. It's been fun. It's a weird time, right? Micah Shrewsbury was here for 2 years, was like a comet, sort of, like had this massive impact. And obviously has already gone and moved on to Notre Dame. And Penn State, less than a week later has a new head coach in place in VCU, former VCU head coach now, Mike Rhoades, who has had a lot of success at VCU, has had a lot of success when he was at Rice. Not as much, but you could tell that the makings were there to sort of move forward and become a better program when he spent 2 years there. And before that, like we were talking about before we recorded, everyone remembers those Shaka Smart VCU teams, and right. Rhoades was the associate head coach for those teams. And his teams play pretty much the same way, right? That 1-2-1-1 havoc press that they call it is still there. They turn teams over all the time. They are frenetic and fast-paced and fun. There is obviously a ton to unpack anytime a new head coach gets hired. There's a lot to work through here, but I'm curious first, because we've talked a lot about the parallels between this team and the 2011 team that you were on, right? This past year's team, the 2011 team. You make the NCAA tournament. You have a lot of success that year. Your coach leaves, right? It's a reset for the program. What do you remember about like that period from when Ed was not there? Like, so when it was kind of vacant until Pat Chambers got hired as the head coach?
It was crazy, as someone 19, 20 years old at the time, maybe 21, I'm not sure. But, you go through these stages where when the coach leaves, then you're sitting there just like, why did he leave? What happened? And you kind of start to think the what if. So what was the reasoning for it and this and that. So you're focusing on that. And then after you get past that, now it's like, okay, who's the new coach? Is the new coach going to want me here? Am I going to be able to fit in his system? Because I was recruited by this old coaching staff, and now we're bringing in somebody totally different. And who knows what's that going to bring for me? Am I in the plans for them in their team in their future? So you go from there to there, and then finally they hire a new coach, and then you have that meeting to see hey, am I part of this fit that you want? Do I need to go into the transfer portal now, or is this the right fit for me? Or can I work on the roads now as the new coach and still be effective and still chase my dream of playing basketball?
Yeah, and that's what's really interesting here, I think, is Mike Rhoades is coming into a situation, you mentioned the transfer portal, where there are 3 guys on scholarship on the roster that are not in the transfer portal right now. It's Demetrius Lilly, Kanye Clary, and Keba Jai. That's it. Evan Mahaffey and Jameel Brown both went in the transfer portal between now and the last time you and I talked. I think both of those were ones that I kind of expected. Jameel is from Philly. I wouldn't be surprised to see him wholly open things up. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to Temple with Fish. And by the way, congrats. We talked a lot about Adam Fisher last episode. Congrats, Adam Fisher, for getting the Temple head coaching job. I think that's well-earned, well-deserved. And I know it'll be nice for him to go back close to home still. But I think Brown could be a candidate to follow him there potentially. Mahaffey, who I spoke to after he left, he said he's leaving it wide open, even potentially coming back. I have no reason not to believe him, quite frankly. We'll see what happens there. I do think, like, if I had to guess, Notre Dame is probably the leader in the clubhouse, just because of the ties to Shrewsbury, just because of the ties to people that were on staff there that will be going there as well. But I think right now it's kind of, you mentioned the meetings and stuff that you had with Pat when he first got there. I think this time is so crucial for Mike Rhoades because you got 3 guys there, and 2 of them were huge contributors by the end of the season, right? Kanye Clary and Keba Jai were 2 guys. You could pencil Keba in as a starter this coming year if he's back, and you could pencil him in whether that was Shrewsbury or whoever else as long as he's on the roster. And Kanye Clary looked like he was going to be the lead ball handler for this coming team. You got to keep those guys, or you at least got to do whatever you can to keep those guys, right? Kanye's went to high school in Virginia. I think he has a prior relationship with Rhodes, which I would assume would help. It remains to be seen on Keba. He hasn't entered the portal yet, which I think is a good sign for Penn State. I would assume he wants to hear Rhodes out before that happens. Watch me say that, and then by the time we're done recording, I'm sure people have entered or something like that. But no, I think he's willing to hear him out. Would not be surprised if he follows Shrewsbury to Notre Dame as well. I think that's a definite possibility. It is for all these guys, right? They follow their coaches, but I think those meetings are crucial right now for Mike Rhodes and trying to keep those guys. And Demetrius Lilly too, like as a culture driver, someone who showed some upside last year, didn't play a ton, but it was always going to be a longer term project for him. Could be a potential good rim protector and floor spacer down the road. The flip side of that, of course, is there are guys playing at VCU or who played at VCU that may want to do what these guys want to do, right? Yeah. They want to follow. They may want to follow their head coach. And I'm curious. It's different when you're going from Penn State to Navy, like with Ed. Mm-hmm. Was there ever any thought with you to potentially being like, okay, Ed went to Navy. I know that Navy is a very different institution compared to everything else, but was there ever a thought of, okay, I'm going to follow him, I'm going to follow an assistant, or I'm going to go anywhere else?
Obviously you have to think about that, but I don't know necessarily about. I think it's different when the times when I was there because it wasn't a transfer portal. So if I did leave, then I was going to have to sit out a year. At the time, I think you have the exceptions, but obviously you have to go through the appeal and see if NCAA gives you that appeal or be able to play.
And the NCAA, by the way, was just either handing out exceptions like candy or rejecting them for people who had really good reasons. So As long as you didn't have a good reason, you probably could have gotten it accepted at that point.
Yeah. So at that time, that was crazy, just to figure out. But, the thought definitely crossed my mind. And first off, being from Houston, and now I had the chance, obviously there were schools that were closer to home. Okay, we want you to come, this and this and that. And for me, I have a chance to be closer to home, still play. But like I said last weekend when we talked about this, it was more so about, hey, adversity had hit and I wasn't going to run from it. When I was a freshman, I didn't start in the beginning and I was upset about that and I wasn't playing. And then, and eventually that changed. Say we make the run in 2011 when I'm starting, and just when adversity hit, I was just always like, "Hey, I'm gonna run through it. I'm gonna take it head on." Like I said last week here, like just the same thing happened. When Ed left, Pat comes, and I'm like, "Hey, I don't really know much about Pat. All I know is that he was at BU. He was under Jay Wright at Villanova. He had Pat's selling point was, "Hey, man, I didn't coach pro guards. I've coached Kyle Lowry. I've coached all those great guards from Villanova." And that was something that I really intrigued me. It held me responsible. Like, hey, I want to be another point guard like those guys, because those guys make tremendous careers professionally and in college as well. So did the thought cross my mind? Yes. And you sit down, you think about the pros and cons, you weigh it all, you talk to your family, you see what's best for you. But at the end of the day, the decision was mine, and the decision is going to be for these kids to decide what they want to do. I think the transfer portal, like I've been saying, it makes it easier now, but you have to just fill out what you think is best for you. And sometimes it is best to go follow Shrewsbury, Notre Dame. It is best to go in the transfer portal. It is best for those guys from VCU to follow coach. But you have to make the right decision, and you can't just go just based off, hey, you know what, this is what everybody else is doing, I'm going to do. And I'm credit to those guys that haven't went into the portal, because why not hear Coach Rhodes out and see what his plan would be for them.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with one part of that, especially there, in that I think you'd be doing a disservice to yourself not to sit down and think about all of the options, right? Because you have options, whether that's staying or leaving. Like you said, sitting down, talking to your family and everything like that. You need to make that decision for yourself. But at the end of the day, it does impact other people too, right? And yes. I think sitting down and having those discussions with people you trust is really important. I think the bright side of the portal that I think gets lost on people sometimes is that it doesn't necessarily mean guys are gone. Now, usually it does, right? Like I'm not blind to this. Like usually guys go, but there's a world where, like I said, Mahaffey comes back, where maybe Jameel Brown gets talked into coming back, what have you. I don't necessarily foresee that happening, especially with Brown. I think at this point, but it can, and I think that is something Rhodes needs to kind of hit those guys up too, right? And be like, hey, let me tell you why we can make this work here, because I will say. The thought of Evan Mahaffey in that 1-2-1-1 press is very enticing, right? That kind of long, athletic guard who can handle the ball. Yeah. He's 6'7". Like So one, he's the kind of guy that Rhodes wants on offense, but that with that press, like he'd wreak havoc, right?
Yeah.
He would. Yeah, he is the exact kind of guy that you want to be involved in that press, to be putting pressure on teams, and you're okay with him fouling a little bit if that's still a little bit of an issue in those situations. He forces turnovers, which is going to be, I would assume, a staple of Penn State teams now that Rhodes is there. But I think the biggest difference from now to 2011 is Penn State's side of things here, right? Because, and this is of no disrespect to Pat, but he was not exactly invested in properly. And I think, he would probably tell you the same, especially when he first got to Penn State. Yeah. They did not make a commitment to men's basketball. You guys were excellent in 2011, and the university didn't turn that into something else, right? They kind of let it fall by the wayside. I don't think that's going to happen here, and I can say that confidently because Mike Rhodes is going to make $3.4 million at a minimum in his first year as men's basketball coach. That is the most that they've ever paid a coach. Micah Shrewsbury was making less than $2 million last year. Now they had made an offer to get him over $4 million had he stayed, but still investing that much into the head coach and doing it over a 7-year period where he's getting a $100,000 raise every year. It turns out to be a 7-year, $25.9 million deal, I believe is the total terms. Again, don't hold me to that. I don't do math. I do words. But the investment level, to me, that is an obvious positive sign that maybe it's not just the head coach they're going to invest in, and I wouldn't think it would be. Maybe it's the assistants. Maybe it's facilities. Maybe it's rallying donors to get NIL. And I think the money they're putting into Rhodes is a huge positive here.
Yeah. I'm glad about that. Now, I'm glad we were able to get someone and spend the money to get him. And I hate to say it, I just don't want it to be like, I want there to be more. This can't be the stopping point. Yeah, we put the money into the coach. And hey, well, we gave him $3.4 million. Here it is. It's not the end. There has to be more. We have to continue. You have to continue to spend the money. You want the program to continue to grow and take off where it's going. You have to continue to spend money. I speak of it in NBA terms. You want the best players. You want championships. You know what you do? You go pay. You get Kevin Durant to go to Golden State. You pay Steph Curry. You pay Klay Thompson. You pay Draymond Green. Like, you have to spend the money. And now you got, and Penn State can't stop here, and they have to continue from the AD, president, everybody, if they really want Penn State basketball to continue to take off and see what it all has to offer. Because I feel like you said, they did a disservice to Pat and did a disservice to Ed. You know what I mean? And almost a disservice.
And did a disservice to the program as a whole, and you guys too, by the way. Like, I don't want that to get lost in this too. You guys weren't given as good of an opportunity as you should have had to succeed.
Right. And again, and then, like I said, now you have this opportunity, and there's a lot of buzz, and I feel like that's pushed, these guys, Kraft and these guys, to make bigger decisions, because now it's the buzz. Everybody's starting to see it. Like in 2011, it was kind of like, we kind of swept it underneath the rug. Ed left. We didn't know what was going on. And Pat comes, he taking over the ship. We never know what was going on. But now here it's out in the open. Like you said, it's the first time they've ever put a coach's contract out in the open. And from what I remember, I don't remember what Ed was making. I don't remember what Pat or Shrewsbury. This is the first time it's been put out in the open. So the pressure is on Kraft and these guys to be like, hey, what are we doing? Because how did we lose Shrewsbury, and why are we not doing this? So they putting this out in the open and say, hey, we're doing our part. But I'm coming to say, and I believe that's not all that needs to be done. There has to be more that needs to be done to continue to have the success that Penn State basketball needs and should have.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I think they probably would have put the contract out there anyways, because this administration has been more transparent. The Pat Kraft administration, if you will, has been more transparent than I think others in the past of Penn State, which we know has been an issue, right, for the university, and not disclosing that kind of information that is valuable to the public and everything. But I think there is maybe not, they're not flexing over it, but they're showing, right? They want people to know, hey, we care, right? And but like you said, that caring has to be followed up on. It can't be the end point. It has to be the starting point for all of it. One thing I wanted to add, though, I think is really interesting. When Micah was hired in 2021, right, I feel pretty confident saying that from talking to people, Mike Rhodes was someone that they would have liked to hire. Mike Rhodes got a raise out of the situation, I believe, but he did not come to Penn State. And I believe that it's because they could not offer him, enough to pull him away from VCU. So I think even that, in comparison to now, is a positive sign for the program, that 2 years ago they couldn't convince this guy to join Penn State. Now, here he is, right? Like, here he is taking the job, taking it long term. 7 years is not a short amount of time for a head coach. It is, in fact, it's the same length of contract that Shrewsbury signed at Notre Dame, to get locked up long term. I think this is the start. I tend to believe that this is going to be the beginning of the investment in the program. And if it's not, like, they're going to get all the criticism they deserve. Not Rhodes, because it is not his choice to invest in the program, but the people above him, the people making those decisions, the people putting the money and allocating it where it needs to go. But I think it would be hard to justify internally even, right? Like being like, okay, we're going to put $3.4 million into this, however much on top of that for his staff, and that's it. Like, that's it. We're not going to do any more. I think you have a hard time. It's like you make the initial investment. It's like, well, now we have to make sure it works, right? You have to make sure that it gets there. Because if it doesn't, like, they end up looking bad too, right? Because it's like, okay, yeah, why did you pay this coach? Yeah, right. Like it's why were you paying the coach if you weren't willing to do more? And so I think all of the signs point to this being a really, really positive sign for Penn State. A really, really positive sign for Penn State men's basketball specifically. There are other things that we've talked about a lot that are issues, and I think are always going to be issues. Looking at Bryce Jordan Center, I think that is never going to be the ideal venue to play at. I'll be interested to see how often they maybe shift to Rec Hall for a few games under Rhodes. But I think him, as a candidate is the other important thing here, right? Because he's had success, and again, not in the front to Pat, not in the front to Ed, not in the front to anyone else. Not in the front to even Micah. But when was the last time, have we ever seen Penn State bring a coach in that had made NCAA tournaments consistently, right? Like Chambers made NCAA, I believe he made the NCAA tournament at Boston in his last year there. Yeah, but he was only there for 2 years, right? There was no opportunity to do it consistently. Micah was never a head coach at the Division I level, at the Division II level, right? Like he was never a head coach anywhere above D3 IU South Bend. And so, like, they were taking a chance on him. To me, this feels, I've seen other people call this high floor, low ceiling. I just kind of don't agree with that. I think Mike Rhodes does have a high floor because of the way they play, that they're going to consistently be a good team. I don't necessarily think this is low ceiling, though, right? Like, I don't think, because I think that kind of misses the point of what Penn State men's basketball history is. Made the NCAA tournament 3 times this century. 3. That's it. Mike Rhodes made it 3 times in the last 5 years, 3 times in the last 5 years at VCU, right? Like, I think expectations were justifiably raised with Micah because it looked like, okay, maybe this is like Sweet 16, maybe this is Elite 8, like maybe it's those aspirations. But getting a coach that can consistently get you to the NCAA tournament is a major step forward for Penn State.
Yeah. It's a huge plus because, like you said, 3 years and 3 times in the last decade, or not decade, and century. What did you say? It's been forever.
This century, since the turn of the century. Yeah,
like you said, it's been forever, and to be able to do it 3 times, and obviously it's an amazing accomplishment. I was being able to be part of it, but like you said, Rhodes has done this consistent, even when he wasn't a head coach, when he was in VCU, coming every year the Final Four teams that they did under Shaka Smart. Even in Rice, he was able to, do well, and now he's in VCU this past couple of years where he's been able to, make the tournament for a good amount of times. And the biggest thing for us right now is to be consistent with what we do. Like you said, we can't, every 10 years make it a tournament. So now when Rhodes comes in and he's able to get the Penn State basketball team to go every year, every other year, that's still a huge stepping stone. Because now all that stuff, now we start to see Penn State always in a tournament. You start to get the recognition. You start to get more calls in the Big Ten. You start to do this. You start to, everything starts to rise. The recruits are coming more because, hey, at least I know I'm going to the tournament every year, and then we can make some noise. And so everything rises up. The Penn State basketball program continues to rise. Everything else, the players, the NIL, everything continues to grow. And that's what Rhodes is. I'm sure that's what his goal is to do, is continue to grow the program. Shrewsbury did a tremendous job. Ed did a job, got us to the tournament. Pat did his job. Everybody did their job, and now, now it's Rhodes' turn. He's taken over at a great point, at a great high point. The administration is backing him, and he has to do that. Obviously he's got the situation going on with the team and the players, and obviously we want to see how that works. I don't know if he'll, hopefully I pray that he'll hit a home run this year and be able to get a good team rolling. But I understand, there might be some type of, downtime or just just hard to be able to get players to be together.
Like a buffer period, right?
Yes,
where
yes,
he's got like a transition year, basically.
Yes. And the transition, same with Mike as well. You know, he was able to do it, but we have to see those flashes, and I think we'll see those flashes just because of how they play. You know, the pressing and the up and down. You know, it's exactly what what makes playing in NCAA tournament teams fun during March. That up and down, that big time shots, the 3-pointer steals and dunks. You know, we love to see that as fans. And that's what he's going to bring, and I'm excited to see it. But, you know, I keep harping on the part that, hey, this can't be it. It's not all on Rhodes. It has to be everybody else to be able to put their part in, continue to put that part in to make this program take off and continue to take off.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the signs are there that he can do that, right? That he can, you know, and I don't want to put any expectations on this year's team, mostly because
Why not? Why not?
Because we don't know a single player that'll be on the roster this year. And I think once we figure that out, we can start to get into it a little bit. And I do think, though, I think there will probably be some guys from VCU that follow him. It happens at every school. Like I said, we're watching it happen with Mike at Notre Dame. And he will probably get some guys on the portal, right? And so there is a world where maybe they're an NIT team next year. Maybe they win like 16, 17 games like Micah did his first year, and you can like see the signs. I think that's the most important thing. Like, if you're a fan, you want to see the signs that, okay, this is going to work. I don't know that it necessarily has to translate into postseason appearance next year. I don't think that's the case, unless like they hit home runs in the portal, and then, yes, you better believe they should make the NCAA tournament. Right. But it's still too early to make that kind of determination. That being said, there are like things I think as a coach that he needs to show improvement with to get Penn State where it wants to go. Those defenses are awesome, but offensively, his best ranked offense, according to Ken Pom, was 122 in his 6 years at VCU. Right, you want to see that be better. They don't shoot a ton of threes. I think you want to see that rate go up. Right, there's a little bit too much mid range game, I think, for the modern game and the way it's played. So I think that'll be interesting to see how much the offense changes. I will say, former Penn State great Joe Crispin being added to the staff, as I was able to confirm yesterday. I think that is a real positive sign. He has had at D3 Rowan University some really awesome offenses when he's been there. I think he was there for the last 6 years. Now he's not going to be, one of the main assistant coaches, but he will be able to do coaching. He just won't be able to go out and recruit or anything. But still, like having him in the room to bounce ideas off of, someone that's willing to be creative, someone that's willing to push the pace and get the kind of shots that you want. I think that's a positive sign, right? And something that maybe he can help. He can help Rhodes grow too as a coach and be better offensively. So, I do think that there is need for improvement on offense. That being said, a real good way to create offense is by having an awesome defense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and getting those turnovers constantly and putting pressure on the other team. And frankly, like, I know the Big Ten is known for having like good ball handlers and guys who don't turn it over. It's also known for doing that because nobody pressures the ball, right? Like nobody is getting in your face 96 feet, like and making you make decisions quickly. I actually think Big Ten teams are known for putting like one ball handler on the court at a time and not having multiple guys that can kind of bring it up. And so now that's changing. Obviously, we're seeing more teams, especially like Michigan State has a bunch of guys that can control the ball. Penn State was like that last year. The more you have guys like that, the better. I think Penn State will probably have a bunch of guys who can handle the ball. They will have a bunch of guys who can pressure the ball. And if the other team doesn't have that, the other team doesn't have guys that can bring it up, I think Penn State is going to wreak some havoc, no pun intended, with his havoc defense. And I don't know about you, but like, I don't know that the Big Ten is ready for that much ball pressure, right? Like I know it's changed since you've played, but it's still like it might be the conference moving slowest when it comes to like evolution of the game in the country, and I think that is going to be a place where he and his teams can take major advantage.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. It's the same way like Micah. The way he transformed that team and he built that team. Hey, we're going to shoot a bunch of threes. We're going to rebound. We're going to push. We're going to shoot a bunch of threes. And we're going to continue to shoot a bunch of threes. You hadn't seen that in the Big Ten in a long time. Yeah, you had teams that shot a lot good threes and they had great knockdown shooters. But to say, hey, we want to take a three before we take a layup, and that's how I believe Shrewsbury's team was. And it's something new, and it was something different, and it forced other teams in the Big Ten to adjust to that. And I think now when you bring Rhodes in, he brings his VCU, the press, and all that type of stuff. that's going to force other teams to adjust to that. Like you said, they're not used to having 2 ball handlers on the court. Well, now we got to have 2 ball handlers on the court. Now we don't have a backup point guard now because we got both of them on the court at the same time because we can't get through the press. I wanted to go back and say the hire for Joe Chrisman, I completely applaud that because Joe, when I got there, was a great mentor to me. He wasn't at Penn State, but when he came to games, when he sought me out in the summer, just helping me out, just teaching me because some pro stuff as well, and just being around what he did. You have to realize, hey man, Joe was one of the first to do it. Take teams to the tournament, and I think they went to the tournament. I'm not sure, but
yeah, it was that 2001 team. That was the first one in the 3 this century.
Yeah, so it was very special to be able to get the knowledge from him. So I think having his knowledge is going to be essential to this team as well. And obviously, what Rose has done, the pros that he's had come out of there, what he's been around, the pros he's been around at VCU as well. So to be able to have that and be able to experience that and share that to these players and the new players coming in is going to go whirlwind for these guys, especially in recruits, and what they need is to understand, like, hey man, Penn State is able to produce pros. Penn State is able to go to the NCAA tournament. Penn State has won the NIT if that's the case, and we talk about the first year, but our ultimate goal is to make the NCAA tournament and to make some noise. We made one. We won 1 game. Why not win 2? Why not go Sweet 16? Why not go for there? And that's the ultimate goal. And I just think he has the blueprint because he's been there before. He's seen it with his own eyes, and he's bringing in guys like Joe as well to have that Penn State flavor or still be part of something that he's not just completely letting everyone else go and starting over from scratch. He's having somebody that's been there, that's done that as well, that's put on the blue and white uniform, and that's gonna help. Is tremendous, and I applaud him for that. I think Joe's going to be great for this team, and even in the future for his coaching career.
Yeah, and you talk to a lot of people; they all talk about how smart Joe is and how good of a basketball mind he is. But you touched on something there at the end that I think is really important too. Bringing in the guy that kind of knows the university and knows the lay of the land, right? Mm-hmm. Someone that's been around, like you said, when your teams, he was always around, like. It's important to have that guy to help you make that transition because Mike Rhodes is from Pennsylvania, but he's not been at Penn State before. And it can be difficult to navigate a new university when you don't know it at all, especially one that I think is as institutionally different as Penn State, right? Like things just work differently here.
Yeah.
Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but they are different. And, I think that is an adjustment, and I think having Joe here will really help with that adjustment. It'll put him in a position to succeed, meaning Joe, because it'll give him an opportunity to continue moving up the ladder. But it'll also put Mike Rhodes in a position to succeed, right? Because now he knows more. Now he knows how to handle things. Now he knows how to maybe you need to go talk to donors X, Y, and Z, because they'll help the program out. And, when you want to fundraise, like, these are the people that you need to donate. And, that money, by the way, from donors is crucial with NIL because that's where that money's got to come from. And so I think that is going to be important. I think the thing I'm most excited to follow right now is who they get in the portal, right? Because like I said, 3 guys right now, 3. That means there are 10 scholarships open. And so there could be a lot of turnover, will be a lot of turnover, I should say, next year. And I think we're going to see in the next week, next 2 weeks, next 3 weeks, it's really going to develop and the roster is really going to take shape. And I think, the front office nerd inside me is always like enthralled by things like that, right? Like I love the off season in sports because I'm sure it's very much stressful from your end of things, right? Mm-hmm. Being the guy that life is up in the air, but from 1,000 feet away, like I just get to enjoy it. I'm like, oh, look at that. Like, look at this move. Look at that move. Mm-hmm. And like, so this is part of that. And the tracking it, getting a hold of guys as they're visiting, finding out guys are visiting. It's, that part of the job is fun to me and trying to see what the roster is going to look like. But I am looking forward to those discussions between you and I about what this is going to look like is like, maybe in a week there's like 6 guys and maybe in 2 weeks there's 9 guys and then suddenly they have a full roster and they're looking at summer workouts and everything already. But it's exciting, right? I think Penn State fans, that's the biggest thing, I think. Mm-hmm. I know some were not happy with this hire because they wanted Penn State to hire Jay Wright. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Jay Wright was never coaching Penn State men's basketball, not in a million years. It just wasn't going to happen.
I don't want to say never, but it was.
I'm going to go ahead and say never now. On that one. I'm going to go ahead and say never on that one. But this choice, hiring Mike Rhodes, I don't want to say skeptical of it. I think the athletic department swung bigger at first, and that's any search. I don't think they settled for Mike Rhodes though. to be clear. I think they have a good candidate who can help this program take the next step, because I think the assumption was that the next step was like Sweet 16s and Elite 8s. No, the next step is consistently making the NCAA tournament, making sure it's not a one-off, right? You have to get there before you can go further. And I think getting there is a good step, and I think it's one that he's going to take. I said this on Steve Jones' radio show yesterday. I'll say it now too. Like, I think he's going to make them a consistent NCAA tournament team. I think they're going to make it every year. Maybe not this first year, maybe not even the second year, but I do think the second year they probably will, depending on what the roster looks like. But I think starting in year 2 or 3, this is going to be a consistent NCAA tournament team because of the way he plays, the way he coaches, the way he has his players play, the way he coaches. And frankly, I don't know how you could ask for much more at this point. Because again, 3 teams in the last 23 years have made it. And this is it's everything.
I don't know if I'm with you. I don't think he was a fallback guy. Like you said, you mentioned that they tried to get him 2-3 years ago. You know what I mean? So you wanted this guy. You know, it's not a fallback guy. I think he was on a list of candidates, and you know what I mean? I think he was the best candidate at the time. I'm sure maybe they swung for the fences and they might have missed some guys, or, you know, guys signed back to Texas. Ryan Terry went back to Texas. I'm not even sure he was on the list or not. But, you know, just
he was. So I know he was someone they had interest in, but once they made the Elite 8, nobody was getting Rodney Terry other than Texas.
Right.
Like, that was just over. Yeah.
Right. So,
and I don't even know, to be clear, that they wanted him more than Rhodes. I just know that he was someone that they liked.
Right. And I don't see that this as, like you said, it wasn't a fallback guy. I think they got the guy that they wanted. I think he's going to bring a much needed continuous buzz that Shrewsbury did to the program. And he's going to continually, you know, our fingers crossed, and which would be, you and I both believe, and I think a lot of people believe, the front office believe, that he's going to bring consistent NCAA tournament appearances. And at the end of the day, that's what gets you Sweet 16s. That's what gets you Elite 8 when you're going to the tournament each and every year. So it's experience. You know, yes, there are going to be teams like, you know, even this year, who even knew the 4 teams now that nobody's bragging picked those 4 teams to be
definitely there. Not me.
Right. So, but I do believe when teams start to go to the tournament, the experience of, hey, we've been here before. We've been to the travel. We've been to this, you know, and I think that's what builds teams to get you to Elite 8 and Final 4 teams. Teams that have done that, hey, man, I've been going to the tournament the last 3 years of my, you know what I mean? So this is nothing. And I think when he's able to do that, and I'm praying soon, and I think it will be soon, that we'll start to see the consistency of getting better each year. Well, this team went, you know, round 32, Sweet 16 the next, Elite 8, Final 4, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think it's got to be incremental. You got to take the steps, and I think they're currently on the right path. His introductory press conference, of course, today, I'm sure we'll talk about that next time. That is going to be interesting to hear what he has to say about the roster situation, about NIL and everything like that. But I think for now, that's a good place to leave it. You can find Tim on Twitter at TimFraze23. You can find me on Twitter at Jon Sauber. You can find this podcast wherever you're listening right now. You can find it on YouTube at Beyond Big Ten, on Instagram, on Twitter at Beyond the Big Ten. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.
See you.
Beyond the Big Ten is a network of podcasts that aims to be your go-to resource for all things Big Ten. We cover the entire conference with shows hosted by ex-players and athletic alumni, aiming to be your go-to source of information and entertainment for your favorite team. Hosted by ex-Big Ten players, media, and insiders, our podcasts are focused on giving diehard fans and those alums an inside scoop about the teams and people that make the Big Ten Conference one of the most watched and most talked about conferences in sports. We're excited to talk Big Ten basketball with you wherever you may be. Subscribe now.